And welcome to the CFVS Brilliant Pathways live chat. I'm Elaine Dixon Cross, and we're delighted to be joined today by James Roth. James has a bachelor's degree from Harvard University and an MBA from the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. He has spent 11 years at Goldman Sachs in various roles, and he serves as a board member for us here at CFVS Brilliant Pathways. James will be talking about financial literacy and the essential skills needed to achieve it. During the live presentation, you can participate by posting your questions and comments in the chat window. We'll ask James those questions for you. We will either interject or ask them afterward. We know we are joined by Friendship Central School District today, so we wanted to give a shout out to Friendship. Hello, Friendship. James, how does one become financially literate?
Hi, everyone. Special shout out to Friendship. Hope everyone's well there. And hello to everybody else. That is a loaded question. How do we become financial literate? I'm still constantly on a mission to get there myself, but it's crucially important. I know it's not necessarily part of the regular curriculum in school, and typically learning about money is challenging because parents maybe don't want to talk about it. It's taboo. It's kind of it's a topic that when it comes up, people just get weird about it. But what I'd like to kind of share with you guys today is that it's really powerful. And once you have, a grasp of the core concepts, you can really use that to your advantage when in everyday life, whether it's wanting a car and needing to know how to pay for it, wanting to buy a home, needing to know, understanding a mortgage, whether it's taking out a loan to pay for school after high school, whether it's earning money for a job and wondering, where do I put it? Do I put this money in my mattress? Do I give it to someone to hold for me? Do I put it into a bank? All these things are very complex sometimes, but really it takes, really doing your homework. Now, the one thing that makes me excited about where young people are today and just kind of the world in general is that whether you're in rural America, whether you're in urban America, wherever you are, there's this beautiful little thing that maybe you've heard of called the internet. And it is just such a wealth of information. I only wish it was as robust and powerful as it is today. And I can honestly say that when you know where to look, there is an infinite amount of free and very often sometimes paid resources available to you that if you spend the time and you look into it, you can really get smart in a hurry. And so I'll be sharing some of those resources with you today, in terms of places you can go look. But that's the amazing thing about growing up in today's world is you can teach yourself. And I know that this is going to sound crazy, but honestly, it's really not. If you have access to the internet, you can find free courses on learning how to build a website, learning how to program, without them being taught at school. And literally, these are things that I've taught myself without any formal schooling. And more, what you're finding is that when you're looking for jobs, the internet becomes an amazing equalizer where you can actually demonstrate the skills and knowledge you have by being able to, project that, whether it's through social media, whether it's through your Facebook page, whether it's through designing a very simple website of your own where you can showcase your portfolio, whether it's art or you have a creative field that you're excited about. Anyways, I could go on, but I really, really encourage you guys to not just scroll for pictures of beautiful cats, but actually dig into some really amazing knowledge because there's a lot out there. So what I thought I'd do, which may be different from some of these other live chats, is I wanted to explain at least one core concept in personal finance. I can't explain everything in 30 to 40 minutes. I want it to be interactive. So if you have any questions, just do the virtual equivalent of slapping me and just send a chat, and we'll find a way to get that answer for you. But what I wanted to talk about may in fact be, it might sound like it's boring, it might sound like, and let me share with you my screen right now. But I wanted to talk about something called interest. Okay. And we all may kind of, please don't fall asleep when I say that, because I will make this very exciting in a second. But what is interest? And often you hear, oh, I want to borrow money, so I have to pay an interest rate. Or if I have a credit card, I'm going to get an interest rate. Or maybe you've never heard about these things. But this is one of the core things that you need to understand about money, which is there's a price to money. So meaning what I mean by that is that, let's say, you want to buy an iPhone. Well, you go to Apple and you give them money, and then they give you a phone. Okay, that's the cost of this product or good, and you've paid to use that good, and so there's a cost to that. In the same way, about money, if you'd like to borrow money or you'd like to use somebody else's money in the form of a loan, there is a cost to borrowing that money. And the way that that cost is expressed or is talked about is called an interest rate, which means that if I lend somebody $10, that I will want in exchange money back for that in the form of interest. So meaning, I don't just want to lend you $10 and just get $10 back, but in fact, there's a world in which there's what's called the time value of money, which is the idea that money today is more valuable than getting money tomorrow. So if I said to you, hey, can I give you $1 today versus $1 in a month? All of us would intuitively say, sure, I want the money today because I can spend it, and so on and so forth. But one of the interesting things about having money today is that you can invest it, and that money can earn you extra money. So meaning, in the same way that if you borrow money from someone and they charge you interest, if you lend money or you put money into a bank, they owe you interest and they will pay you interest. So your money is always growing. And that's where decision making comes in around, if you have a job or you make money and somebody gives you $1 for, let's just say, wages. Hopefully it's more. I think the minimum wage is a lot higher than that. I don't want to say offhand, but what do you do with that money? Do you go and spend it? Or do you give it to a bank, and in exchange, they will pay you an interest rate and you will earn money over time, and that will grow and grow and grow. And so one of the things that I think is important, and I will kind of move into this, is this cost of money. So think of it as rent for money. So if somebody were to lend, or if you wanted to borrow money from somebody, it's the rent that's being charged on that money. And I don't want to get into how interest rates, how we come up with the rate. It's expressed as a percent. I don't want to talk about it, whether it's 2% or 10% right now, or how that comes up, because that would be really boring. But and that's something to be important of. But I just want to demonstrate how these concepts can really help you save rather than spend, and learn that this money, if you're not spending it today, you can actually save it, and it can actually grow, and people will actually pay you to borrow your money. And that is just as simple as going to a Bank of America or Chase or a local bank and putting it in the bank and watching it grow. And let me explain exactly how that works. So the one thing I will tell you is that 66% of Americans, and this is according to George Washington University, not me, so don't take my word for it, take theirs. 66% of adults in the United States do not understand what interest is. Yet every day, whether you're taking out a loan to buy a car, because typically when we want to buy something expensive, right? If I said to you, okay, you want to go out and buy a car, well, and that car costs $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, you don't have all of that money today. Or you may not want to spend it all today, even if you do have it. You'd like to save it because you can, as I mentioned before, earn money on this amount of money through banks, through the interest that will accrue. What you do have other options, which are, I can put down a little bit of money today, maybe not the full $1,000, and then borrow the remainder so that I can use the car, and over time, I will pay back the amount of money I borrowed plus interest. Okay, so rather than have it be an abstract concept, let me try and explain to you how simple interest works. So let's say you and a friend asks you, hey, can I borrow some money? And I'm just going to use $100 to keep it really, really simple. And that friend says, hey, I'm willing to lend you that $100, but I would like you to pay 10% interest. Well, what the heck does that mean? Or so what that effectively means is that there would be a payment, okay, a loan of $100, and the interest payment is calculated as a percentage of that $100, and there would be an interest payment of $10. So there's in a loan, there's the principal amount, which is the full amount that you're borrowing. In this instance, it would be $100. So lend $100, and in exchange for lending you that $100 for 1 year, you agree to pay me $10 in interest and the $100 at the end, because I've lent you that $100. But the interest is constantly being calculated, or is calculated as, as I mentioned, it's expressed as a percentage, so that you can understand that in a year's time, you'll not just owe me $100, but you'll also owe me that extra $10. And that's what I've kind of laid out here, which is the total loan payment is 10% of 100, which is $10, and then $110 is the full amount that gets expressed or gets paid back at the end of the loan. And then you can look at it as 1 month, worth of interest, and that's, I don't want to get too complicated about the math, but just understanding the core concept. Now, one thing that will come up when you're thinking about interest rates, and in a second I'll start talking about credit cards, right? Because that's where interest rates really come into play, which is if you have a credit card, and everybody has them, they're kind of floating around. This whole concept of I buy something today with a credit card, but it's not my money. It's the credit card has lent me money to buy something today. I go to the store and I swipe a credit card. And however, there's a catch. You're borrowing money from the credit card company, and therefore you will, at the end of, it's usually a month, owe them interest on that, or a percentage of the amount that you borrowed, and in addition to the amount that you've actually borrowed. And so it's very important to kind of understand these concepts, and in particular, something I'll get into here now, which is called compounding, which basically just means you can also earn interest on interest. Now, in these examples, remember, I'm explaining it as this is something you owe, but think about it this way. If when you get older and you have a job and you earn this money, okay, you can actually charge someone interest. So by giving it to a bank, you earn the interest, and all of these concepts work in your favor. So now let's look at this slide. So working on compounding, which is, in the last example, I said $100 and a 10% interest rate. Well, let's say that same friend, you say, for $100, I want to charge you 1% interest that compounds daily. So I would think, oh, well, 10% is more than 1%. So that sounds great. I'll take the 1%. That's amazing. The problem with that is this idea of compounding, which means that it depends on how often that money compounds, which is it's interest on interest. Believe it or not, that's a real thing. So the way that would work is that the interest payment on the first day, if somebody's charging you 1%, would be 100 times 1% or $1. So that's just on the first day. And you recall in the last example, if we go back a slide, the whole year only cost me $10. Wait a second, $1 a day for 365 days. Whoa, that could get expensive. So if we expand on that concept where it's $1 the first day, but because the interest is being charged on the original amount of the loan and the interest on the first day, all of a sudden on day 2, the amount of the loan is now $102. And you can see how this snowballs, and this effect just keeps going. And there's some mathematical equations here that I'll leave with you after. But the concept is that now all of a sudden, instead of just multiplying it by 10%, now all of a sudden you're multiplying it by 10%, and it's every single day that amount is getting charged. And now all of a sudden, at the end of a year, that's a really bad friend. because you now owe this friend $3,778.34. And that's because the interest is accruing daily. Okay, so every single day, that interest is growing, and the interest on that interest is growing. And in reality, when your friend gave you a 1% compounding daily interest rate, what he was actually saying in plain English is, I'd like to charge you 3,678% annually. That stings. That hurts. That hurts me just talking about it. So when we think about, as we're making money and we're trying to understand, okay, do I want to pay for, I'd mentioned before that if you don't have the cash today, you borrow it, and there's a cost to borrowing that money, which is this concept of interest. And, the question then becomes, okay, well, when I swipe my credit card, okay, how much interest am I going to be paying, or what is the interest rate that the credit card company is going to charge me? So what I'd like to do now is let's do some internet shopping, shall we? Okay, so I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go to,
James?
Yeah.
Well, I have a question. What kind of loans are typically using compounded interest?
Credit cards, banks. Really, there pretty much if you're dealing with the real world, you are rarely dealing with, sorry, I'm technically challenged currently. Sorry, I just wanted everyone to see. So typically when you deal in the real world, you are never, 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 ever talking about the simple example that I used the first time. You are always talking about compound interest, meaning everyone is either charging you or you are earning compound interest. Now, you can imagine it's sad that 66% of adults don't understand compound interest, because every day they're subject to it. And so it's a really big, gap, and it's why I'm a strong proponent of, and maybe I'm not the best teacher, so I apologize, and hopefully everybody's understanding. I'm happy to spend time with people who want to get into the nitty gritty, but I just wanted you to get the broad brushstrokes and introduce this one concept, because there's just so much stuff to cover that I thought maybe spending one concrete example would be useful.
This is especially important. Our seniors are going out to take student loans out. They're heading into college, so understanding this is great right now. I want to give a shout out. Richfield Springs joined us, and we have New York City schools. So I just want to say hey to everybody before you give an
example. Okay, so I talked about our bad friend that wanted to charge us a significant interest rate. But now what I want to do is I want to surf the web with you. So let's go. I'm going to go into Google for a second here, and I'm going to say, I want to get a credit card. Okay. I don't even know what those responses were that just came up. It's weird, but we'll just go with it. Okay, apply for a credit card. All right, so I'm clicking in here and I'm going, all right. Let's see, we've got Visa. We've got, all right, so they're going to charge me a $48 fee when I take out my credit card. And by the way, this is all to borrow money. So this is, you apply for a credit card. I'll get into that into a second as to how you can actually get approved to take out a credit card. I'll talk about that in 1 second. But let's just assume you can, which is a bad assumption, but let's just assume for a second that you can. And also, for those folks going to college, when you get on a college campus, you will be bombarded by credit card companies trying to make offers to you around borrowing money. They want you to have a credit card so you'll be spending because you won't be thinking about it, but hopefully now you'll at least have your ears up and you're attuned to the fact that, oh, something might be rotten in Denmark. Thank you for my Shakespeare.
Well, Friendship did have the question of when you would advise that they get credit cards. When would you advise someone starts with a credit card?
When you have the capability of paying it back. Right now, because you guys aren't working, I would not recommend taking out a credit card. And I will talk to, because think about it, if you're borrowing money, and I just mentioned this concept of interest, here, let's stop surfing the web. When I mention this concept of interest, when you borrow money and you take out a credit card and you start spending, unless you have the money somehow, they're going to be charging you more every day And when I mentioned compounding, it's compounding every day. So the interest is growing and growing and growing and growing. And so you can see very quickly why this can get out of control and why a lot of people have a lot of credit card debt. And all of a sudden, yeah, of course I'll be able to pay it back in a month. But if you don't understand how much you're being charged and how quickly that amount of money can add up, it's trouble. So what I would actually recommend is opening up a bank account for yourself. And I'll get into this as to why this is important. Actually, you know what? That brings me to my next point. So I'll get back to the credit card in a second. But since you asked, I'm delivering. Okay. There's something called a FICO score. Super boring. I want to fall asleep, but don't. It's important. Okay, the FICO score, it's used by banks to determine whether or not they should lend you money, i.e. whether or not you should have a credit card. So typically, college students or folks who graduate high school, you're probably asking yourself, what is my FICO score? Do I have one? What have I done, to deserve this? Well, adults typically have them because they're floating around spending and earning and borrowing. But for you guys, there's really three core factors that go into your FICO score. And the reason why a FICO score is important is because it is the measure that banks will look to determine whether or not you should get that credit card, or whether or not they should do business with you, or whether or not they should give you that loan. So it's important to have a really strong FICO score. And I included a link down creditkarma.com, which is one that I use, or where you can check your credit score. You should all sign up and see if you have a credit score today. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But there's a bunch of, I don't want to get into the weeds, but effectively you will have a score. And it's based on how much debt you've taken out in the past. Hopefully that's zero for many of you. It's payment history, meaning have you met your interest payments? Have you kept up with them? Have you missed them? Have you flown the coop, left the country, and now you have big debts outstanding? And then the third thing is length of credit, which brings me to why I would take out a bank account now, which is taking out a bank account now allows you to start building a banking profile online, which allows you to start building credit. And so in certain circumstances, if you did want to take out a credit card and could 100% confirm that you would never, ever, ever spend it, which is unlikely because it's going to be burning a hole in your pocket, then that will establish credit. So I guess going back to the point earlier is that I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't, but being able to establish your credit history is a good thing as long as you're willing, as long as you're able to make payments. And so FICO score is these three kind of core factors go into this box, and then let's not think about how it's done, but it spits out a number between 300 and 850, and 850 is between 850 and 780 is excellent. Way to go. You're my hero. And then it gets worse and worse as you go lower. And typically, if you're, oh, there's a typo. Everybody makes mistakes. Oh God, that's even worse. Okay. So, no, sorry. This is 500. This is, okay. Whew, nobody's perfect. Certainly not me. So if you can see the 500 to 300 is something called subprime. I don't want to get into that, but basically that's not so good, and you likely won't be able to get loans. And this is important if you want to go buy a car and you want to take out a loan, if you want to buy a house and you want to take out a mortgage, which is just a fancy word for a loan that if you don't pay it, they can take away your home because it's backed by your home. So it's, if you don't make your payments, then over time, a credit card is something where it's not, if you're not making your payments, it's not backed by your home specifically, and they can't necessarily take your home, but they can, try and take other monies that you have kind of lying around. If you just decide not to pay it, please pay it. Please, please, please. So anyways, this is a concept of the FICO score. So, and that goes back to surfing the web. So I'm gonna go back to surfing the web, and okay. So then I go back here and okay, so I've got this regular purchase APR. Hold on one second. I actually wanted to go into, okay, so Credit Karma, it'll show you let's not get too personal, but you're going to be able to see my credit score. Don't tell anybody. Mine happens to be pretty good. And that's simply because
Looking good, James.
I'm looking good. Would anybody give me a loan, please? So these are a way to kind of check your credit score. You can see, you know, those are fairly good. So stop. Hey, you guys are pretty nosy. Stop looking at my credit score. But if you go in here, like let's say this is, and Credit Karma has credit cards available, but let's not. This is only Instruct. So this one says, hey, you're pre-approved based on my FICO score that you just saw. Wow, that's amazing. Oh, let me see here. Wow, they're giving me rewards. So every time I spend money, I'm going to get something back. And I get a welcome bonus of $150. God forbid I click this and they tell me, oh, wait, I have to spend $1,000 in the first 3 months. Oh, there's always a catch. Now, what they haven't showed you here is those pesky things called interest rates that I just mentioned, right? Because we're going to have to pay those. If we're going to be making purchases with somebody else's money, they're going to expect to get money back. You'll notice that it's convenient that there's this little button down here called See Details, Rates, and Fees. Oh, sneaky. Okay, so we go in here and we can see down here we have, now we start getting into interest rates. This APR, that means annual percentage rate. And so you can see that when you purchase, when you do a regular purchase, oh, and they try and do these fancy things where they tell you, oh, this intro rate is 0. So don't fall for that. 1 second here. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to go into another window here. Oh. Okay, so let's go back to my fancy presentation or lack thereof. So what I wanted to do is kind of zoom in here and really go through this detail. So if we look at these key features, let's take a look. So what they're telling us is that let's forget about intro purchase APR for a second. Regular purchase APR, they're trying to tell me that they want to charge me up to 25.99%. I love how they do 25.99 because they don't, 26 is worse than 25.99, even though it's so close. So that's sneaky. Now, what does that exactly mean? Well, that means 25.99%. Okay, the way that the annual percentage rate is quoted equates to 0.07% daily. Okay, and they do this sneaky thing where they're not telling you how often it's compounding. I'm going to help you through that, but they're not really giving you all the information. They're saying that this annual percentage rate, okay, of 26, what you have to do is you divide that by 365 days of the year. And so every day you're paying this 0.07%. But it's being compounded every day. So we do a little bit of the funky math, and really what it actually means is that you're paying an effective rate, because of the compounding, 29.7%, 29.67% every year. So they quoted you one thing, which was 25.99, and now all of a sudden you're paying 30%. Holy smokes. So you can only imagine how hard it is to be able to pay something back when every single day you're being charged an interest rate, and then on the interest that you don't pay that day, that's accumulating, and then there's interest on interest and interest, and anyways, you can kind of get the sense of where this is going, and that is that it's incredibly hard to pay off. Now, what I'd like to do is let's look and see. I'm gonna stop sharing this for just 1 second. I'm gonna go here, I'm gonna go here, and then I'm gonna go back to this. So, want to open a bank account. Yay. NerdWallet, that's cool. Okay, Bank of America, let's open up. NerdWallet's actually a really good site. I would highly recommend it. It's a lot of nerds teaching you about wallets. No, just kidding, about finance. So, we've got some stuff going on here. Let's see, savings account. Here we go. Let's see today's rates. Let's go. So this would be, you've made some money. Now all of a sudden you want to give it to a bank because you're going, listen, I know you guys are charging this. I know you guys are charging me this daily compounding. Actually, you know, when I borrow money from you, but now I wanna actually lend money. Now this is where it's kind of silly, because you can see here, and I'm just gonna make this a little bit bigger for you guys. You can see that if you open a bank account here and you have less than $2,500, the rate you're getting, okay, is 0.03%. But wait a minute, I just told you they're charging you almost 26% every time you want to borrow money from them. But when you're lending them money, they're only giving you 0.03%. Let's not get carried away with why. Life's kind of unfair. So that's one of the things we have to take into account here. But if you're borrowing money, okay, and you owe somebody at a rate of 26% a year, and you're earning money at 0.03% a year, I don't think that's going to work out for anybody if you are being expected to meet those obligations. So there's other things called investments and stocks and bonds and other things you can put money into to make it grow a little bit more. But this is a really good start to have money in a savings account so that over the years it's growing, even at a small rate here. And there's other ways, I don't want to get into it, but there's other ways, there's other bank accounts that are better. If I were to go, not that it's a plug, but there's a bunch of other bank accounts where it's, so if I go here and I go to my old company, they have something. I'm not selling you anything, don't worry. So they're saying, okay, it's 2%, which is why I would recommend opening the bank account at a bank like this rather than a Bank of America, because you're going to only earn 0.03% when you put it in, into the account. Whereas here you're going to earn 2%. I like my odds with the 2% versus the 0.03%. So it makes sense to be shopping in the same way that you would go on Amazon, or you would go to the store and you would say, okay, well, I can buy this piece of candy for $1, or I can buy it for $2 over here. Well, I'm going to go, or if you want to buy gas and you're comparison shopping, it's exactly what you should do when you're looking for bank accounts and where to put it. And you can actually see, okay, right here, what in the what? You can actually see right down here, they actually compare it for you. They go, Bank of America is 0.06% and Wells is 0.01, and we're 2%. So anyways, these are kind of the tricks of the trade that are very useful to kind of pick up on. And it's just to give you a sense, just a very brief taste. I'm going to stop right now hammering around and answer any questions somebody may have. But what I did want to do before I did that is quickly I wanted to do one last thing, which is, and I can share this stuff with you guys afterwards. A wonderful place to go to that I really love, and a lot of the concepts that I briefly explained that probably still don't make a lot of sense, that's okay. The first time anybody tells me anything I don't understand, and it probably is my fault as a teacher here. So blame all on me. But Khan Academy, which maybe you guys have heard of, I'm sure you have, but they have the most amazing website for learning really anything. And it's all free. They teach you coding, they teach you math, they teach you science, they teach you about the stars, they teach you literally anything that one could want to learn. It's there and it's free. So if it's free and it's sitting there, that's what the internet does. It allows you from anywhere in the world to be able to access information. Super awesome. I would do it. Udemy, which is the third one on this list, very similar. Some of those you have to pay for. Same with Lynda. But again, a slew of courses. And in fact, believe it or not, and I didn't include it here, Harvard and MIT and Yale and Stanford offer their classes for free online. So you can actually take college courses from a Harvard professor on, or Yale or MIT. They offer, I was the other day looking at a computer one because I'm a nerd and that's what I do. But for you guys, you should do what you're most excited about and what really gets you going, whether it's graphic design. They literally have classes for everything. I could sit here until I'm blue in the face. And they really teach you how to get great. And then obviously, like anything in life, it's about how much you practice and how much time you put into honing the skill and improving and setting goals for yourself and achieving them. Credit Karma, as I mentioned before, you kind of got a brief glimpse of it. That's one where it'll compare credit cards for you. It'll compare bank accounts for you. And it has a big library of information around financial literacy and learning. And then the last thing on here is one of my all-time favorites, which is when I wanted to learn how to code, wanted to learn computer programming and didn't know anywhere and didn't really know where to start. it's this woman who is in a similar situation, knew nothing about coding, taught herself, and now she offers all these resources that give you a very detailed roadmap on how to build really cool websites or anyways, and it's for kind of the new economy. So that's just a plug for that. I don't know her or anything like that. It's Learn to Code with Me, learn to code with.me. Oh, that was exhausting. Okay, so I hope that wasn't too boring. I hope it was not complete gibberish.
It was awesome.
And now I'm happy to answer questions, or I can keep sitting here spouting about nothing. How are we on time?
We have a lot of questions coming in from all over.
So,
oh,
God.
Khan Academy is awesome. I want to say on literally any subject that you want to have information on. I love that too. And great information, those colleges, you can take classes for free.
Yeah, I will follow up. I will follow up on that after this, and I can post. But yeah, there's
great.
Yeah, the major universities have amazing libraries where you can take intro to psychology, you can take intro to design, you can take intro to computer science, you can take anything you want from the best. Listen, just because it's Harvard doesn't mean they're the best professors. It's a really nice brand, don't get me wrong, and I love my time, but let's be realistic. Not every teacher is the best. So you have to spend some time figuring out how you learn and etc. But
what a great opportunity though.
Totally. That's what the internet is. So, and it's cat pictures, but yeah.
Oh, well, that's fun too.
Yeah.
So we do have a bunch of questions. One of them is making me chuckle. I'll end with that one. But this one is, what can I do now as a high school student to have the greatest impact on my future finances? And I think you kind of spoke to that. But if there's, a few tidbits of advice that you would say when they're in high school, what should they start doing?
Okay, number one is don't be afraid to ask questions and be curious. So being curious about this is the only way you're going to learn anything about it, because it's so easy to just kind of sit back and do nothing and let a lot of messages or advertisements come your way and shape how you think about things. So the first thing is being super curious. The thing that should encourage you is that all of the information is right at your fingertips. It's literally on the internet. You just have to kind of peruse and know where to look. And some of these websites that I've mentioned are really great ones. And I would encourage you to check those out. But honestly, the best way to prepare yourself is being super informed. And so what that means is not being afraid to ask experts in the field your questions. And those experts can be, people around you that, you also don't want to be getting information that may or may not be correct. So you got to be careful, whose opinion you take and whatnot. But it's just about being curious and asking the questions. So don't be afraid to speak up and ask questions. Don't be afraid to, get the hard to obtain answers by going on the internet and being informed, and try and search through the noise. But it's really a matter of just being super curious, like anything else. If you want to be armed, do that. And the other thing is I would say start saving. I know it's really hard, but one of the future finances is about saving and allowing interest to compound and continue to grow. And so the more you can save that you don't have to spend now, you'll see the power of compounding. And so there's a simple math trick that you can do. It's called the rule of 72. If you have an interest rate of 10%, divide 72 by 10%, and that'll tell you in how many years your money will double. So if you are earning 10% on your money and as an interest rate, your money will double in 7 years. So think of yourself now, let's say you're 16, 17. By the time you're 22, if you've put away $1,000, you'll have 2,000, right? So those are all the things where, just saving now as much as humanly possible, not getting into debt, putting money away and saving for your future and not spending it now on things that you don't desperately need. Again, that's a personal decision as to how much joy you derive from buying things today and using them versus later. But I highly believe in saving now, because as the years add up and the interest compiles, listen, that's how the richest people in the world do it, right? So they're doing something.
So along with that question, what's the best way to set up a budget?
Oh my God. Okay. There's a website called mint.io. mint.com. It's what I use. They have amazing budgeting tools. But if you literally go to Google, so this is the hard part. This is the blessing and the curse about the internet, is that you're given a lot of information. And so sometimes you'll experience this in the job world where, you'll be asking a question and it's like, oh, well, that's totally readily available. So most of what I'm going to suggest to you is literally at your fingertips. If you have a question and I'm not the expert, but I mean, maybe for today. So I'll tell you. So I use Mint. That's really the one that I use. But if you were to Google budgeting tools, click in there, figure out the best ones for yourself, like what's the easiest to use. But really, in reality, budgeting comes down to this. Money coming in equals how much you have to spend. If you spend more than you have, you've got to make up for that shortfall somewhere. How do you do that? You have to borrow money and end up paying interest. So the first rule of budgeting is only spend what you have, no more. And then based on what I had said before, try saving. So, a typical, I'll just throw this out there as a rule of thumb, or I like to think about is depending on money coming in, try and save about a third of it and put it away into a savings account. And then the rest will be used to, your living expenses. But as you're thinking about choosing a place to live and how much the rent costs, think about how much money is coming in. So that's how you can kind of back into what's my best living situation, because, when you look at the rent, can I afford this? Well, how much money am I bringing in? I know I don't want to borrow to have to pay rent in order to live somewhere. So how can I kind of meet those demands? So it probably wasn't the cleanest answer, but it's just one version of it. But hopefully that gives you a sense of how to kind of explore these things on your own, because unfortunately, we just have a short amount of time today. But the internet is just listen, I don't think it's not the best thing in the world. I'm not saying it's a panacea, but it's amazing when, if you think back to ancient times, who did you learn from? You learn from the people around you in your tribe, right? Called tribal knowledge. And that information was passed down generation to generation. And we've had this explosion in learning and what people can do because we were able to, at some point, write it all down and then distribute it. So that was the printing press. That's how information kind of scattered. So with the printing press came the ability to write down information and disperse that information so that people could learn from everybody else's great findings all over the world. And now we have the internet, which is, it's instantaneous. If somebody finds out something, it goes all over the world and you have access to it. And that's why we've had this amazing technological growth and all sorts of productivity growth in the past few years. But it's amazing the information you can find and how smart you can get by devouring other people's information online. Just don't pretend it's your own. That's all.
So the next question is kind of personal. Do you enjoy what you do and teaching others about it? And what steps did you take to pursue your dreams?
Whoa, that's a loaded question. So I should tell you that I don't work at a bank anymore. I am working in technology now. So that's a broad term, but I don't have enough time to kind of get into the nitty gritty. But I didn't like what I was doing. And so therefore I made a change. But I think in terms of following your dreams, I would say that firstly, it's about knowing what those dreams are, right? So and it's about being deliberate about those dreams. So I think the hardest part for everyone, because we're all always trying to constantly improve and figure that out, is how do I define my goals and how do I define my dreams and what are those things? Because then once you've identified those and you put those down as a marker, you can start working backwards to figure out, okay, how do I get there? And if you can identify the steps that you have to hit over time in trying to achieve that goal, you break it down into smaller and smaller components. So, and what I mean by that is like, okay, let's say you want to be a doctor. It's, okay, I know I have to go to med school. Okay, well, before med school, in order to get there, there's a bunch of classes I have to take in order to, whether it's go to med school or become a nurse, there's trainings that I have to take. Okay, what are those trainings? Well, those trainings require certain high school classes being met or certain additional classes being taken and passed. So how do I get those? And then continuing to work backwards and breaking it down into smaller and smaller and smaller pieces so that the big overall dream doesn't feel too overwhelming and you're constantly making progress. And then the other thing is just perseverance and kind of gritting through, because life isn't always up and to the right. And it's not always a straight line. And so it's a matter of seeing the big picture and being laser focused on those dreams once you've identified them. And then not trying to waver too much or fall away from those dreams, and always be moving towards them, even when things aren't going your way. And if you really care about something, and if the dream really is a dream, you won't really let obstacles get in the way, because they'll be just that. They'll be temporary obstacles that you'll go around and circumvent and ultimately achieve those dreams, because you can, constantly fret about what's not going right. But what you can do is you're always in control over the decisions you make, situations you put yourself in. And it's always about trying to improve and get better and learn. And so that's been, how I've been able to achieve my dreams, is just being super curious and constantly reevaluating the path to get there and adapting to new information and putting it into that path, and then achieving those shorter term goals, and then ultimately making sure that everything's aligned. I wish I were better at it, to be honest. It's a skill everybody's always trying to constantly improve. But the other thing I would say is enjoy the ride. Don't always be concerned about the destination, but really kind of live in the moment and enjoy now. Wow, that was deep. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to get too deep here. I'm trying to keep it light.
We talk about perseverance a lot, and I think that's really sound advice for everyone to hear, that obstacles can be temporary and that we're in control of our destination. I like that you went deep, James. It's real. And the last question that we're going to ask today is, oh, sorry, we see another one coming in.
Nope.
So the last question we're going to ask today is the one that made me chuckle. And that is, when is the last time you made an unnecessary purchase?
Do my kids count? Because, I mean, good Lord. That is unnecessary. I
mean, I
all the time. I mean, you think you're going to do something and you don't do it, or, hey, I need to go to the store and buy this piece of food and I'm not interested in eating it anymore. I think the key is that learning from the unnecessary purchases and not making the same ones over and over again. So it's okay to make one. It's even okay to make two. It's okay to make, but just don't make the exact same ones. And learn from them and continue on. But in terms of purchases, I think what turned out to be unnecessary, and it is necessary, I need to do it again, was my gym membership, and I never went. But I need to kind of sign back up for that again. I don't know, how do I look? I look pretty fit.
You look great.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, appreciate it.
Well, right, people say you can run outside or walk outside, right? You don't need the gym membership. All right. Well, that was fun. So if more come in, maybe we can get them to you. And there was a lot of interest, so we can follow up with that. Maybe we need a James Roth part 2.
But sure, hey.
James Roth.
If you guys want to be subjected to this again, then I'd be happy to do it.
There was a lot of interest.
Why don't we do this? If I would say submit, because one of the things I wasn't sure when we started talking about this is what you guys are interested in. What do you guys want to learn about in terms of personal finance? What is on your mind? It could be anything around, budgeting was a good one, or it could be around, a mortgage or how to buy a car or things of that sort. And then we can, I can be more focused, in the next. I just kind of interest, I think, is something that probably wouldn't come to mind for most. And so it's the core tenet of everything I would talk about in personal finance, because there's money costs money. It's called interest, right? We learned that today. So I just needed everyone to know that initially.
This is where they're going, college. So I think that's a great core concept to start with. So we've sent that out to them so they can tell us what they're interested in, and I can be in touch with you.
Yeah.
Does that sound good?
Not going anywhere anytime soon.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you, James, for volunteering to do our first live chat. It went great. We had lots of people tuning in. Thank
Wonderful.
you. Thank you, everyone that tuned in. A recording of this live chat will be available on our website, so you can use it in classes or go back to the information that James gave us. And we'll look forward to seeing you again for our live chat in January. Happy holidays, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.